one of the dilemmas that I always have is to present this for people who are beginning their careers in Prader-Willi or people that are very experienced, and I never know which direction to take. So for some of you people that have a lot more experiences, a lot of this stuff will be old hat, but I wanted to make sure that we cover all the bases. And second of all, like Hubert just said, my master's degree is in rehabilitation, and I've always been very dissatisfied with the level of vocational services that we have, because they put people in categories and they place them and that's it. Now there's starting to be a change, thank God, and I want to present some of the things that we do. Okay, factors determining ability of employment. I'm going to go through this quickly so we'll have time for discussion. The age of the person, level of cognitive functioning, degree of need for staff, availability of food, transportation, can they learn a profession or occupation, motivation, behavioral control, tantruming, ADHD, if any, and other factors like autism, epilepsy, diabetes, and so on. The sheltered employment in a workshop setting, the different types of employment we have in Israel, also the terms have changed over the years. When I lived in the States, these were the terms then. I know they've changed since then. I don't know the new terms in Europe or the States, so I'm just going with these, but I hope you'll all recognize what I'm talking about. Sheltered employment in a workshop, sheltered employment in a regular setting, group supportive employment in a regular work setting, individual supportive employment, group independent employment, and individual independent employment. In Israel, we have some examples I wanted to share, a few examples of things that are more recent and more in line with what I was hoping for. We had 4 residents working in a group training program to work with people with the elderly. And in the beginning, it was 4 days a week. They sat in class, they learned first aid, development, medical problems, communication, nutrition, feeding, hygiene. And one day a week, they worked in a facility for the aged with dementia and medical problems. After several months, they sat in the class 3 days a week and worked 2 days a week. After several more months, they sat in class 2 days a week and worked 3 days a week. And this continued for a long time. And then Corona hit and it was discontinued. But it went on for like 3 years. And they loved it. And they provided services for some of the residents that were very important. One of our women speaks Russian. And there were some Russian-speaking patients there, and none of the other staff spoke Russian. And so she was a translator, and she was a go-between between the patients and the staff. They did a lot of good work, and everyone was disappointed when it had to be discontinued. We have a man that was trained in sterilization of dental tools over 12 months. He finished the course successfully, and then it took them a long time for him to find a job, but now he's worked for almost 3 years. He hasn't lost weight, which is one of the issues we need to discuss when we get to the discussion, but he functions well and loves his job. We have a man who worked, he did 2 years of national service in the computer lab of a local elementary school. He was very successful with the children and with the teacher that he worked with. And after the 2 years, he was offered a job at the same school doing the same work. And he's been there now like 3 years. No, this is his 4th year. During the first year and a half, there were a lot of issues of food stealing from the teacher's lounge and so on. But during the last 2 years, there have been very few incidents. His BMI is stable at 19. He loves his job. And now he began studying education at a local teacher's college. He wants to teach computers in a school when he finishes, which will take a few years. The school's in the neighborhood of the group home, so he walks to and from. And the social worker here has contact with the teacher and with the principal. National service and local chapter of the SPCA. We have a young woman now. She's been here 2 years and she's very bright. And because of the behavioral issues, she wasn't able to succeed in other things. Finally, she's been in this program now about 3 or 4 months. The SPCA is the Society of Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. They have a dog area and a cat area. She works with the cats. She cleans cages, feeds, waters, and she travels independently by public transportation. There has been food stealing, and I made a presentation here to the staff. So the staff know what they're up against, and they're quite willing to continue because she does good work and they like her. So thank God she hopes to continue there next year as well. We have 2 women working as aides in preschools. 2 of them, they worked previously with the elderly. Then they were out of work because of Corona for a year and a half. And they were offered jobs, 1 in each program. Children from age 6 months to 3 years of age. They're integrated with regular staff. They perform all the tasks that the rest of the staff perform. They travel independently. There are food security issues, but so far it's been manageable. We hope it continues that way. The staff like them and they do good work. So we just hope it continues. We have a man that worked in a shelter workshop for 11 years. Then he was promoted to a group supportive employment program where he did essentially the same kind of work in a regular work setting. And now he's doing the same kind of work in an independent setting. No staff supervision. He does it all on his own. He's transported there by a van, but the work is completely his own. And in the beginning, there were food issues. Now they separated the break time of the regular staff, and he has break at a different time, and there's no problems. It's going well, and he's happy. We have lower functioning clients that are in shelter workshops long-term. They enjoy the work. They don't have many behavioral issues, and they're happy. So they'll remain there for the foreseeable future. Okay, we know that the age of the person regarding PWS is really important in terms of behavioral issues. In the beginning of their 30s, there's a degree of reduction of behavioral issues. Until then, or until the behavioral issues are more under control, they're not able to utilize their abilities. In our experience now, we have people in their 40s and they have even fewer behavioral issues, and they're functioning more and more at their level of ability. At any age, all these issues need to be addressed when planning employment, and it becomes easier as the age of the person increases. I'm sure that a lot of you find this to be the same case, that as they get older, the behavioral issues are less. Level of cognitive functioning is important. Depending on the level, if everything else is equal, then that determines the intensity of staff supervision. In addition to level of functioning, the need for staff supervision is determined by level of anxiety, OCD, dealing with food issues, threshold of frustration, tantruming, willing to attend, need for movement. Can they sit all day, or they have to move around? Food security and activities and all that should be written out. Breaks, meals, activities written out and posted, so they have a visual. Food security, all food should be locked. That's a problem in every work setting, because we have non-Prader-Willi people in all the work settings, and they bring their food and so on. It's an issue that we're never able to solve completely. All meal plans are posted, times of the meal, contents, place, quantities, and they don't have access to food outside of the meal plan unless a non-Prader-Willi person is there with his own food. Close supervision is needed at all times because of that, and especially during breaks. And we also have staff accompany them to the bathrooms and any other places outside the workroom so that they won't take detours. We have a lot of our residents, especially lower functioning, they are transported by van with staff. For smaller groups, we can have them take public transportation with staff. Individuals, higher functioning individuals travel by public transportation. And we don't have any high functioning workers who drive, but in the past, I know in other countries, in the States, when I worked in the States, we had a few people that drove. So that might be an option as well. When occupational training is available, you need to determine suitability of the person, and if it can be done as a group, that's even better, because then we have a staff that accompanies them. And we have had, as I explained before, we've had several people get trained in different lower level professions, and they're working. Some were trained in groups, some were trained individually, depending on the ability of the person to profit. And also, like one of the women that now works in one of the nursery schools, she started a program about 15 years ago, and she couldn't get control of her eating because there was a non-Prader-Willi program. And now she is able to do that. She's now 40 years old, and she was in her 20s.
So I think the next thing he said was all training needs to take into account the needs of the workforce so that appropriate job placement may be made. taking into account the needs and likes of the individual with Prader-Willi syndrome to try to best fit the occupation to them and provide training. Oh, I can't read. Okay. Motivation of the worker is always an issue with some of our folks, right? Do they want to work? And then matching that with what is the realistic idea of their skills? Sometimes those don't always match up. Sometimes they think they can, maybe run the space shuttle, which is great. Maybe they can, but there are times when those ideas in their heads don't match up with the reality of what their skills and their interests and their abilities can be. Is the self-evaluation consistent with the opportunities that are available for work for them in the employment setting? And do they want to work with the other workers? We want to try to minimize conflict with other people too, or at least provide them with the skills to reduce conflict in the workplace. Are the behavior skills, again, it goes back to conflict, behaviors during the work setting that may get them fired or put on suspension. So we need to make sure that it's not too stressful too for their abilities. Let's see, when the motivation of the worker changes, are there alternative options? I think in many countries, the options for our folks for outside employment are limited. And so making sure they have some training, that they do have other skills and other opportunities available to them. So behaviors affecting the job placement. And I think this is going to probably be a global issue. Are there behavior tantrums among the other workers? If so, are the various job placement opportunities, are the support staff there able to cope with the level of tantrums that some of our individuals can have and some of the other individuals that work there? Are there known triggers to those tantrums? And if so, we need to come up with a plan to avoid those or deal with those head on. It is extremely important to have Prader-Willi specific training. Is there an option of separating the tantruming worker from the rest of the group? Sometimes they have breakout spaces, we call them here in the U.S. Can they be moved to a special area to de-escalate and to be supported on a one-to-one basis if need be? Is there ongoing verbal reinforcement during the day? That's important to keep them on task. Are behavioral rules and requirements posted in writing and set forth either each day or at the beginning of employment? When behaviors stop the worker from continuing at a particular job site, what other options are there? Are there plan Bs in place at employment sites should something happen? Without leaving the worker unemployed for long periods of time, it's usually detrimental for the person to be unoccupied. So I guess in the U.S. we have a saying, idle hands are the devil's workshop. So if they're not busy, they will have time for their minds to kind of wander and maybe not be as productive or other things.
Okay. When there's long-term attention spans that are required for a particular job, does a person have the ability to do it, or does he have attention deficit? And there are lots of stimuli that can affect attention. But if the person just has a shorter attention span, there are things that can be done in terms of ongoing reinforcement based on his attention span. Before he reaches his threshold, he needs to be reinforced, and that allows him to continue for another period. And that can go on, which will help. Also, if some people, they can't sit that long, so if they can have a job that allows them also to move around, that will also help in terms of attention. Also, written job description and the needs and all the things that are going on the job, if that's written, that helps them also. Okay. We know that there are a certain number of Prader-Willi people that are on the autism spectrum, ASD, that affects a lot of behaviors and so on, OCD, tantruming, and perseveration and all that. Diabetes is an important issue with a lot of our people. The staff needs to be well trained in working with them in terms of if there's hypoglycemia or hyperglycemia, how they just test for the blood sugar levels and so on. Epilepsy, staff needs to be aware what can happen if there's a seizure and what they're supposed to do. Other medical issues, skin picking can be an issue. Visual perceptual skills can be utilized because auditory perceptual skills can be lower level. In Israel, we have sheltered workshops. We have, they're more for lower functioning people. They work in groups. There's staff there all the time. The breaks are in the workshop. The job skills are limited. Remuneration, salaries are limited. Written schedule of work and meals and so on should be posted, not always. And regular staff not familiar with PWS needs to be trained. Sheltered work in a regular setting. We have taken workshop people and placed them in like a regular factory setting, and we have a staff person with them, and they do the same kind of work, but it's in a regular setting. They seem to feel that that's advancement, and they feel good about it. They do good work, few behavioral issues, transportation is provided, and so on. Group supportive employment, placement of a group at a regular site. We have a lot of those going on. You can read it pretty much yourself. Staff person is there. All meals are eaten at the jobs. Breaks are taken at the job site as a group. Tasks and plans for the day, and they're all written and posted. Transportation is by van. Very few go as a group on public transportation. And regular staff not familiar, of course, has to be trained. Individual supportive employment, the workers placed at a regular job site. Work tasks are similar, if less demanding than for regular workers. Remuneration salaries are based on an evaluation by an occupational therapist, and she determines the level of functioning based on the percentage of functioning compared to a regular worker. A staff person visits a job site weekly or sometimes more often. The worker is integrated into the regular workforce. He must arrive and leave independently. And again, the regular staff has to be trained. Group independent employment at a regular site. Tasks are similar to those of regular workers. A staff person is present with the group as needed. Transportation is usually by van. The group is integrated into the regular workforce. Remuneration is based, again, on the same thing. An occupational therapist determines it, and so on. A good example of that was the 4 people we had working with the elderly in that facility for the elderly. Individual independent employment, this is a person that's placed in, he's reached a level he can work in a regular site independently, has tasks similar to regular workers. The group home staff makes contact with the staff at the work site intermittently. Transportation is via public transportation. Workers integrated in the regular workforce. Remuneration is based on the average functioning, like the same thing as we mentioned before. There are many people with PWS that can learn an occupational profession. There are some vocational training programs in Israel that accept groups of trainees. And there needs to be the option of sending the trainees with a staff person who is responsible for food, behavior, and breaks, transportation, and so on. When the group training is not an option, then individual training may be possible, depending on abilities of the person. The training may be long-term, a year, 18 months, or short-term. Upon completion, job placement is absolutely necessary, even when group placement is necessary. And we have had groups that were given regular jobs as a group in a regular setting. Discussion. This is what I wanted to get to as quickly as possible. I'm sorry for my internet falling.